welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel. Also consider clicking the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. Also, if you are interested in a private reading, I do readings in astrology on a variety of topics ranging from relationship readings to career to transits for 2-3 years, or solar return charts or predictions for 1 year, etc. You are free to email me at the email address that I will leave in the video description, and I can send you a pricing list and reading options and any other details that you might require. Also, I want to mention that I have started membership options on this channel, and the short of it, just to give you the short perks that you will get if you choose to join the membership section, you will get 1 extra video per month for each membership stage or tier. So for the first tier, you will get 1 extra video per month. For the second tier, you will get 2 extra videos per month, so you will have access to level 1 and level 2 videos. And for level 3 or third tier, you will get 3 extra videos per month. The level 1 and level 3 videos are going to be on a variety of topics, so basically anything related to astrology, but it will be content that is not shown on my regular usual videos, right? So this is members only exclusive content, and it can range from, tips and tricks on how to read a horoscope to, I haven't done this yet, but I plan on doing maybe members only astrological synastry for famous couples, for instance, or the analysis of famous people's horoscopes, but then I can also get into divisional charts, etc., etc. So all kinds of things. The level 1 or second tier of membership options is especially related to synastry astrology topics, meaning relationship-oriented astrology. So this could be things like how to discover which kind of partner archetype is right for you according to your horoscope, or it could be, again, different characteristics, whether you're going to have a good marriage according to your horoscope or a less than stellar marriage. But you can find more concrete examples in the lists that you will find in the video description, because I have added the playlists where you can already see all the videos that I have posted in each members section. So yeah, you can see what videos you will have access to from the ones that I have already done. But I will continue to post, like I said, 1 extra video per month for each level of membership. And in addition to that, in the members only section, you will have access to members only polls, and you will also have priority when it comes to getting your comments replied to on my channel. And you will also have stickers that basically show up next to your username that show that you are a member, and a couple of exclusive emojis. All right, so that's pretty much all the perks that you can have as a member on my channel. If you're curious, you can check the video description for more details as well, or you can click the join button under any of my videos to also see the prices, because the prices will be shown in your local currency. All right, in addition to the members only section, I also have a tarot channel, and I post there semi-regularly, and I will be linking the tarot channel in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. It's called Martine's Tarot. So if you are curious about tarot, if you're into it, maybe check out my channel, maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening to this intro. And now I'm going to get straight into today's topic. Hello and welcome to my channel. So this is going to be the predictions for 2025 series. I know that I should have started a while ago, and for a bit I was kind of hovering back and forth between should I still do this series, should I not do it? Those of you who have been watching my channel for a few years, you probably remember that I have done these predictions for, the year in question, like yearly predictions, a way back. I think I started with 2021 maybe. And I don't remember exactly if I did them until 2023 but I definitely didn't do them for 2024 because I did say at that time also I was running late and I didn't really have the time or energy to focus on them, and they are quite time consuming. But this time I said, you know what, F it. I feel like it's time to do the prediction series, and I did do a poll in my community page some weeks ago. I think it was more than a month ago, to be fair, and I asked how many of you would like to see your predictions for 2025, and pretty much an overwhelming majority said that they would be interested in seeing it. So I figured, hey, I'm not that late because 2025 still has at least another 11 months to go, so I figured better late than never. So here it is. I'm going to start with the predictions. As an introduction, I do want to say, again, mostly for those of you who have watched these prediction videos in previous years, you probably remember that generally I like to divide the year into subsections. This year was really complicated to do, so I'm not going to be able to do a chart for each subsection, because if I had to do that based on the planets that I normally look at for general predictions, which are Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, and Jupiter, I would have had to divide the year into like 5 different charts and, compute 5 different charts and arrange them and all that. So I chose to divide the year in just 3 different charts, and then 2 of those 3 charts have subdivisions. But you're going to see what I'm talking about in a more visual way when I get to each subdivision. You will see a chart with the general transits and more details on them. I do want to start talking about, I want to mention, okay, I'm not going to hold a long speech, but I want to mention again, just as in previous years, I have decided to focus on, like I said, Saturn and Rahu, Ketu, and then Jupiter, because these are the more slow-moving planets, so they spend a longer time in one sign. So obviously, it doesn't mean that these are the only transits you're going to be going through in 2025, because all the planets are transiting, right? As you probably know, the sun is going to be spending about 30 days in one sign. That's why everyone knows that they're born in Aries or Gemini or whatever, or, what all of the people who know their zodiac signs know, which is that the sun changes every month, like every roughly 30 days or so. And in addition to the sun, of course, there's the other planets. So each of them are going to be transiting through a sign. But because these are general readings, and of course it would be impossible to look at everything, because even with these readings, you're going to see, I think they're pretty detailed. I'm going to go pretty much in detail with a lot of things. But it would have been even more impossible to take into account all the transits. And then, of course, speaking of the subject of predictions, you also have to look at the dashas and the mahadashas and the antardashas and all the different types of dashas that you're going through, which are basically periods of your life that are ruled by a particular planet or a point like Rahu Ketu based on your time of birth, right? So every person is going through their independent individual dasha or sub-dashas, right? And like I said, there are also multiple types of dashas, but I'm not going to get into that. Those of you who come from Vedic astrology, and again, those of you who have been watching my videos for a long time, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. The rest of you, I do recommend that you also do a little bit of research, and you can also find some videos on my channel where I do briefly mention dashas and antardashas, although I don't think I've ever done a video that where I specifically focused on how to read dashas and antardashas. I don't know, maybe I should look into that. If you're interested, comment in the comment section. But this was the introduction. Another part of the introduction, actually, that I want to mention before I get into it is that you're going to see this on the charts that I have drawn, basically. that I have marked the aspects of the main planets, but I just want to remind you, just in case you have forgotten. Again, those of you who have watched my channel for a long time, you probably know this already, but as a recap, if you're looking at Saturn, according to Vedic astrology, Saturn has so-called special aspects. In fact, multiple planets in Vedic astrology have special aspects or one-sided aspects. So Saturn aspects the 3rd, the 7th, and the 10th houses from where it sits. Rahu, Ketu, and Jupiter aspect the 5th, aspect the 7th. Well, the 7th is not relevant because they're always in opposition to one another. So Rahu and Ketu are always opposite. So it's not really relevant to look at the opposition because that's where the other one is placed. But Rahu and Ketu are aspecting the 5th, the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th placements from where they are sitting. Also, of course, I didn't mention this, but of course they're aspecting and they're influencing the houses that they're actually sitting on, not just the aspects. The houses they're sitting on are the most powerfully impacted, but they also cast single-sided aspects. So yes, Rahu and Ketu are always in opposition. So that means if you have Rahu in the 1st house, Ketu will be transiting in the 7th house, right? Because they're always opposite one another. That's why on the charts that you're going to see, I have not even marked Ketu on the horoscope because it's understood that, you know, Ketu is in opposition to Rahu. And I might mention Ketu in the readings a little bit, but mostly I'm going to be focusing on Rahu. Another mention that I think is quite important is the fact that I have written down on the charts that I have drawn, I have written down the time intervals where when these transits are going to be active. However, these time intervals, they are general. So bear in mind that the dates of the transits can vary by a few days depending on your location. So in order to know exactly when, let's say, Saturn is going to hit your 11th house, if you have Ascendant in Taurus, you have to actually compute your chart and do a transits calculation based on your actual physical location to know exactly the day and the minute when, you know, it's going to switch from Aquarius to Pisces, just to give you an example. But the dates that I have chosen are, you know, pretty accurate. Give or take, you know, 1 to 3 days, I would say tops, right? This is another mention. So, aside from this, yeah, I'm gonna get straight into it. Oh, there's one more thing that I wanted to mention, which is that, again, you may remember this from previous years if you have been watching my channel for a long time, that I like to do my predictions in a random order. So what I do is, right now I actually have Astro Dice. Last time I used to just pick, you know, notes from like a little urn that I created myself. I would, you know, basically do like a raffle thing where I would pick each sign that I was going to do next in the series. But now I use Astro Dice, and I like to mix it up a little bit just because, you know, I don't feel like it's fair that Aquarius and Pisces are always last and Aries is always first, you know? So, I don't know. That's one aspect. And another aspect is, I don't know, it's just more fun this way for me to just do them randomly in a random order. And I pick the next sign, you know, by rolling a dice. So, just wanted to mention that in case maybe some of you are wondering why they're all scrambled. All right, that's pretty much what I wanted to mention, and this is the introductory part. There is going to be the same introduction for each of these videos, so if you listen to it once, yeah, you can, you know, you should just listen to it once. Oh, yeah, there's one more thing. There's one more thing that I want to mention, and again, I have mentioned this in previous years. You can apply these readings for your ascendant sign or your moon sign. And I'm talking about the ascendant sign and moon sign of the D1 chart, the D1 natal chart, not any of the divisional charts. Okay, I cannot vouch for divisional charts. You can also try to look for, I don't know, maybe look into it, tell me if you found some kind of weird coincidences with divisional charts, but I would not look into it because divisional charts are something else, all right, a different type of energy. But with respect to, the moon and the ascendant, you can definitely look at these predictions based on your moon and your ascendant sign, and there will be accuracy connected to it. With the moon sign, it's more to do with your internal landscape and your emotions and what makes you happy on a psychological plane. Let's say, what happens on your inner landscape more, not so much like actual physical things that are happening in your surroundings, right? Whereas the ascendant is a lot more about actual life events. So something to bear in mind. All right, that's pretty much it, and I'm going to get straight into the interpretation right now. Libra, welcome to your predictions for 2025. Yes, I know, super late, but better late than never, and you still have most of the year to go, so there it is. Please remind me, and I have said this before with previous yearly predictions, remind me to start in October this year for next year if I have the time to do the readings at all. But please be so kind as to remind me to start early with these readings because they are really time consuming. I'm going to mention this with other signs as well. But anyway, so I'm going to get straight into it. Let's go with the chart 1 phase, which started January 1st and is going to continue until around March 26th. This is the time when Saturn is transiting in Aquarius, Rahu is transiting in Pisces, and therefore Ketu is in Virgo because Rahu is always opposite Ketu. They are the north and south node of the moon, respectively. And Jupiter is going to be in Taurus throughout this period. And this period, of course, is a continuation of the previous months of, the last months of 2024. So you might recognize that some of these patterns have started a while back and are continuing as you start with this chart 1 phase in 2025. So first thing that I notice is second house is heavily aspected. It is not where planets are sitting, but it is aspected by a lot of them. So it's aspected by Rahu, Jupiter, and Saturn. So the second house is a house of resources, of savings. It is the house of family of origin. It's also the house of self-esteem to some extent. And it's also a house of, how should I put it? I was going to say, it's also a house of diet. But it's basically a house that shows your resources overall. So what resources do you have to draw from? And with Jupiter looking at it, this is pretty positive because Jupiter will make sure that you are going to have everything that you need. Second house shows, like I said, your ability to save money. So especially cash money, and it also shows fixed assets. So it shows physical items when it comes to wealth. And also Jupiter is also transiting through the 8th house, which is your house of, resources that come from other people, especially the spouse's family of origin for those of you who are married. But even for those who are not married, 8th house means resources coming from other people, other people's money, so to speak. And of course, the 8th house also rules anything financial, including banking systems, including insurance companies, pensions, pension funds, things like that. So any kind of organization or field that manages other people's resources, other people's finances, is pretty much connected to the 8th house. And because we have this aspect of the 2nd and the 8th house from Jupiter, this shows this is a pretty good time for you financially, right? So you're going to have plenty of resources, like I said. This might also be a good time for you to, play the lottery. But I would say for this, you also have to check more individual placements because these are general transits. Since you also have Saturn going through the 5th house, it might be a little bit trickier. But yeah, especially speaking of Saturn going through the 5th house though, because it's ruling the 4th house, you might have luck when it comes to real estate during this time. So investing in real estate, and then it could also be about vehicles. And for those of you who want to go to university or you want to enlist in some kind of a study course, this is a good time for that. You might find it very easy to get financing or just different ways to make it happen. Somehow the universe, let me put it like this, is going to facilitate this course happening for you if you are very dedicated towards it. Aside from that, with the second house, it also shows that there's a lot of emphasis being placed on the family of origin, the relationship to your family of origin. This, of course, with Jupiter in the 8th house will show, and let's not forget, by the way, Jupiter is ruling, no, sorry, it's not ruling. It is ruling the 6th house, and it's ruling the, let me check, 3rd house. So this is a good time to get into the psychology of the relationship with your family of origin. If you are someone who is going through therapy, this could be a time when you will go through some kind of significant breakthrough in therapy with respect to understanding how your family has influenced you, especially your belief systems. Since Jupiter is also aspecting the 4th house, the 4th house is also, it's not just a house of real estate and vehicles, it's also the house of the mother, and it's also the house of your emotional well-being. And Jupiter being a great benefic, looking at the 4th house through aspect, is going to make sure that overall your mood is probably going to be pretty positive, pretty good. So it's unlikely that you're going to, be particularly depressed during this time. Of course, I always mention this disclaimer, depending on what is going on in the individual horoscopes. But if you just look at it from the general transits perspective, this should be a good time for you emotionally. Ketu going through the 12th house, because I have to, since I'm thinking about, more metaphysical aspects here, Ketu going through the 12th house, this is showing that your intuition is extremely sharp during this time. So you're going to be borderline psychic. Your dreams in particular could be very telling, so pay attention to the messages that you're getting through your dreams. Again, you could really benefit through meditation as well. Ketu is co-ruling Scorpio, so is co-ruling the 2nd house as well. And this is where you also have to pay attention a little bit. While it's going to be easy for you during this time to make money because of that Jupiterian influence, you also might find that your expenses are growing at the same time. And you might also sometimes have a kind of uneasiness or a kind of stress when it comes to your finances because of this Ketu energy. You might feel like, oh, you're not making enough money, or it's like you might get this feeling like no matter how well off you are, you could always be making more. There might be a feeling of, instability or a fear of not having enough. Aside from that, Jupiter aspecting the 8th, so sitting in the 8th, aspecting the 12th house and the 4th house as well. This is showing that it's a good time for you to travel. 12th house in particular speaks of long distance, long-term travels. So this is a good time for you to travel to faraway lands, anything that you have been planning for a long time, and traveling to places where foreign languages are being spoken, which is the case for most people in the world. But yeah, especially places where there's a foreign language being spoken, these are places you should be traveling to. You will have a good experience. And this might also show that you will have some kind of potential spiritual experiences while traveling with the Ketu and Jupiter influences. Saturn going through the 5th house, this is showing that during this time, this can be seen as kind of a bittersweet situation because on the one hand, Saturn going through the 5th house, aspecting the 7th, does show that this could be a good time to find a long-term potential romantic partner. But on the other hand, it will also dampen the romance department overall in the sense that Saturn doesn't like superficiality. So any kind of connection that is not leading for a long-term committed relationship is probably going to dissolve. And Saturn is also going to make things harder in the romance department. You might find yourself either because you're just not going to be in a romantic mood, you might be going through, a disillusionment or a higher level of cynicism. You may not be particularly romantic during this time. That could happen, or on the other hand, you might be open to romance, but you will just come across a lot of frustrations because Saturn, again, doesn't like I said, doesn't like superficiality. So any person who's coming towards you with an attitude of lightheartedness and let's just have fun and all that stuff is probably just going to become a bitter tasting situation for you. Because again, Saturn wants, long-term potential development. So as long as someone is coming towards you with an attitude of seriousness, and they are committed and they're interested in maybe marriage or at least something long-term, then Saturn is going to allow the development of that relationship. If it's superficial, though, probably Saturn is going to nip it in the bud, or, like I said, it's just going to give you frustrations and, well, for lack of a better word, suffering in the department of romance. Aside from that, Saturn is ruling the 5th house itself, though, and also the 5th house is about children, and it's also about having fun, and it's also about education. So when it comes to the topic of children, education, and all that, you will tend to have slow and steady development. And also, this is a good piece of advice in general, even when it comes to romance. With Saturn aspecting your 5th house during this time, it's better for you to just take slow and steady steps. Don't rush into things, make sure that you are getting to know a person. For instance, if you're dating, make sure that they are serious. Again, when it comes to education, for instance, be thorough. Don't just focus on, reading 10 books in 1 week, but only skimming through, reading them on the diagonal of the pages, so to speak. So instead of focusing on quantity, focus on quality in general. So, focus on, for instance, if you're going through an education or you're going through learning new things or courses, focus on just understanding things thoroughly before moving on to the next step. Make sure that every step you take is very solidly based and very thorough. That way you will avoid a lot of the Saturnian frustrations and sufferings, because Saturn is going to hold you accountable in any area it sits in. And in the 5th house, it will hold you accountable if you are reckless, if you're not focusing on being thorough in your education, or also potentially relationship to your students. For instance, if you are a teacher, relationship to your children, if you have children, or relationships with children in general, if you have to work with children, for instance. So in any area connected to the 5th house, you have to take it slow and take it steady and be focused on quality instead of quantity, and think about how this is going to be a long-term secure development, right? How can you turn it into something solid that is going to stand the test of time? And the aspect on the 11th house, okay, it also shows that during this time you might really learn who your true friends are, in the sense that, again, people who are not meant to be close friends, or they're not really serious about seeing you as a serious friend, they might fall by the bandwagon. They might disappear out of your life. And you might also have some unpleasant experiences involving friends for a lot of the same reasons, in the sense that Saturn wants you to know where you stand. It wants you to know what your reality is. So if there are people around you that maybe are just not right for you, or they're not really solid friends, they might disappear, or they might, somehow disappoint you in some way, to the point where you start to rethink this relationship. But that's because Saturn, again, wants you to be thorough, wants you to kind of revise the situation surrounding your friendships and your acquaintances, and think about who are the people that you really want to be close with and who are the people you don't really want to be close with. All right. Aside from that, with the aspect on the 11th house, there might also be delays and frustrations when it comes to getting what you want from your career. So you might feel that maybe you're working hard, putting in the hours in your career at your job, but you are frustrated that you're not really getting the amount of pay that you would like. You think that the money is coming in slowly. Even though you might still, again, with the Jupiter, you might be going through a good phase financially, but when it comes to the actual pay for your efforts, the efforts that you put into your career, they might be slow to come. The pay might be slow to come. There might be frustrations. And really, this is, again, Saturn really testing you and making sure that you are going to persevere in staying thorough and staying ethical towards your career, towards your job, and trust that the rewards are going to come in time. Rahu going through the sixth house. Now, the sixth house is the house of work. It's also, well, it's particularly the house of employment. It's also the house of daily routines. It's also the house of competitions, enemies, arguments, anything that has to do with enemies. It's also the house of pets. So during this time, especially since Rahu is co-ruling the fifth house, this is a good time for you to, again, get a pet, because fifth house is about what you do for fun and having that connection to the sixth house. This is a good time to, get a pet, or if you already have a pet, it's about spending more time with them. You're really going to enjoy spending time with your pet. Aside from that, with Rahu going there is an obsession going on towards the sixth house. You might find yourself becoming overly concerned with health in general, your health in particular. There might be a slight tendency to become a little bit hypochondriac. Now, with Rahu, there is also the tendency to develop health problems because Rahu is a malefic. However, when it comes to this topic, I would definitely recommend, looking at it from the individual horoscope perspective, because you have to look at a lot of other placements, like what houses are sitting in the sixth house, what other aspects are going towards the sixth house. So just looking based on this aspect, it's really hard to draw a conclusion. Although Rahu would tend to show more health difficulties, they may not be serious at all unless it's a transit that's really personally triggered by other planets, other placements in the horoscope. Aside from that, there is a tendency towards workaholism. You will feel a strong desire to think about what you are giving towards the world. You might become overly generous, or you might feel like you want to be of service more. There might also be a tendency to deal with foreigners more, like either wanting to be of service towards people of foreign culture, feeling like you're helping others, like for instance, donating to international charity. Or you could be actually finding yourself working with foreigners more than usual, because the sixth house is the work environment. And then also, I have to say, because of that fifth house influence, if you are dating, you might find yourself, or let me put it like this, if you have already started dating someone before this transit, and it's already a relationship that is going steady for a while, you are likely to experience more arguments in their relationship than usual. There might be a higher tendency than usual to get into arguments. And of course, if you find yourself in this situation, it helps to just become self-aware and do everything you can to avoid arguing. With Saturn aspecting the seventh house by third aspect, this is showing that most of your effort is actually going towards the seventh house during this time. So if you are married, this means that you will be putting a lot of effort into making sure the marriage is going well. If you are single, then you are probably someone who is putting in a lot of effort into finding a suitable partner, dating with intention, so to speak, and or irrespective of your, relationship status, if you have a business and you're going to be putting in a lot of effort into that business. And even if you don't have a business, the seventh house is about how you relate to people in one-to-one situations. It's also about how you relate to audiences. So you could be putting in a lot of effort into interpersonal relations in general during this time, in the sense that you want to make sure that your relationships are going smoothly. Best case scenario, you want to be ethical, because again, Saturn is also ruling the fifth house, it's ruling the fourth house. So there's a lot of emotion involved, and there's also a lot of personal value. Like, you find yourself really valuing relationships during this time, and you want to make sure that everything is going smoothly. Since Jupiter's ruling the sixth house and is going into the eighth house, again, I don't want to be the bringer of bad news, but I feel like I have to give a heads up about everything that I see. One thing that I want to say is you might have some kind of health problems that end up influencing your mental health on the one hand, potentially influence your reproductive system. So, for instance, especially, not just when I say health problems, I'm talking especially about health problems that are due to your daily routine. So there might be some unhealthy habits that could backfire in with respect to your reproductive health. And with respect to the eighth house connected situation, it can also be your mental health as well, because eighth house is one of those houses that really shows the emotional and mental health of a person. Can, together with the other two water houses, the 12th and the 4th. This could also be a time when you gain because of some kind of either legal battle or competition, competitors, naysayers. So, for instance, if there are people trying to go after you in the workplace, it might backfire against them, and somehow you will end up winning out of that. You might also find yourself detaching from your usual views on spirituality. You might also have less of an interest in hidden affairs. Like, if you're the kind of person who, for instance, liked dramatic romantic relationships, during this time, you probably lose interest in that. Like, you're no longer drawn to, I don't know, romantic moments or people who play games or something like that. You're going to feel less interested in that, and you're going to feel a lot more interested in, meaningful connections. I also have to say, with respect to the health department, you do want to watch out for the cardiovascular system, and like I said, the reproductive system, and also the bowels, your digestive system overall, but the lower abdomen especially. And yeah, this is pretty much what I can see for pile. Sorry, not for pile. Oh my god, I'm set on tarot. Sorry, my brain is still thinking about tarot. For the chart 1 phase. So, moving into the chart 2 phase, which starts around March 26th until June 8th, 2025. This period is characterized by Saturn being in Pisces, Rahu staying in Pisces, just like in the previous phase. And Jupiter is going to switch signs from Taurus, in which it stays until May 13th, to Gemini, where it will enter on around May 13th and stay there until June 8th, 2025. That's why I also did not draw Jupiter on the astro chart, because it switches signs, so it would have been way too much for me to draw like 6 different charts for all the sub transits of Jupiter and all the overlappings of the transits and so on and so forth. So yeah, but I'm still going to take Jupiter into account when I go into the interpretations, even if it's not on the chart. So obviously the main focus here is falling towards the 6th house again, and it's even more so than in the previous phase or the first part of the horoscope, because both Saturn and Rahu are going into the 6th house. And normally Saturn going into the 6th house is actually a positive aspect. Saturn is very much in its own element, being a malefic, Rahu also being a malefic, so the both of them together being in a Dustana house, which is a negative house, the 6th house, which is about potential health issues, competitions, enemies, so on and so forth. And this generally shows that your enemies, your naysayers, are going to become pretty quiet during this time, or they will find it very hard to get to you, because Saturn is there pretty much to protect you. The not so positive side is there might be health issues, so you have to be really careful with your health during this time. Having 2 malefics in the 6th house, especially if you also have some malefics in the 6th house natally. If you have benefics in the 6th house, right, if, let's say you have Jupiter in the 6th house in your horoscope, then the negative impact of this transit is probably going to be dampened. You know, it's going to be, how should I put it? Yeah, it's going to be dampened. It's going to be lessened. And let me just, I'm just checking. There might be arguments happening with your mother or people from the mother side of the family. There might also be potential arguments happening with your landlord if you are living with, or your tenants if you are a landlord, for instance. So there might be some frustration, some arguments happening in areas connected to that 4th house. So mother figures or the mother side of the family, or real estate or vehicles. Again, you could run into arguments with a car salesperson, for instance. So everything that I have said about Rahu and Ketu in the chart 1 phase pretty much stays the same because they don't change placements. However, with the Saturn influence, the 3rd aspect of Saturn this time is falling on the 8th house. And in the first phase, so like I said, until around May 13th, Jupiter is staying in Taurus. So you have to imagine that Jupiter is also in that 8th house until around May 13th. And this shows a particularly emphasized 8th house as well. This shows a lot of emphasis being placed again on situations where you might want to be using other people's resources, like getting a bank loan, getting health insurance, or dealing with insurance claims in general. If you are someone who works in insurance or works in anything connected to the 8th house, this is definitely going to be a good time for you professionally because you have Jupiter going in the 8th house. But aside from that, and also, for instance, what else was I gonna say? So it's not just about banking, insurance. It's also about, it's also to some extent about sexuality, but not as much as the 7th house. The 7th house is more connected to sexuality. 8th house is more about research, about getting to the bottom of things. It's also about psychology. And it's also about, speaking of resources, anything to do, like I said, with pensions, insurance, managing other people's money. And of course, it's also about the in-laws. The 8th house is the second from the 7th house, so it's the house of your spouse's family of origin, for those of you who are married. So having Jupiter in there and Saturn in there, this also can show that there are going to be some big responsibilities connected to the family of the spouse during this time. They might require more attention than usual, but then with Jupiter in there, generally also shows that the relations with the in-laws are going to be positive. They might also be especially supportive, maybe even financially towards you. Again, the savings, the finances and everything. So everything that I said about Jupiter in the chart 1 phase is also standing. So when it comes to Jupiter aspecting, so while it's in Taurus until roughly May 13th, it's aspecting the second house. Again, it's also aspecting the 12th house. It's aspecting the 4th house. So this also shows, again, pretty comfortable situation when it comes to finances. Although, again, I recommend that you don't overspend, because there is that tendency to be a little bit wasteful, because Ketu is co-ruling the second house and it's going in the 12th, which is the house of losses. So you do have to be careful not to overspend, or not to spend all of your savings. Aside from that, with Saturn and Rahu there, so like I said, Saturn co-ruling the 5th house, the 4th house, Rahu co-ruling the 5th house. It can show potential health problems, especially with areas involving the chest, involving the abdomen, right? So the digestive system, everything involving the digestive system, also the chest, and this involves things connected to the cardiovascular system, and things like hypertension, hypotension, so things like these are not to be neglected. If you have any kind of issues connected to these things, you want to get them checked as quickly as possible. There might also be some problems with pets involving your house, like they might inflict some kind of damage on your home environment. I have to say, if you have children, they might run into trouble when it comes to education. So they might have trouble at school, either with colleagues, with peers, or with the actual education part. But again, I wouldn't dwell too much on it, because a lot has to be seen from the individual horoscope. Now, when Jupiter is moving into Gemini, starting May 13th until June 8th, together with the rest of the placements staying the same, it's moving into the 9th house. So 9th house is the house of long distance travel. It's also a very positive house, even though Jupiter technically is going to be in an enemy sign, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the enemy of Jupiter. Aside from that, though, Jupiter in the 9th house is a very positive placement. It's going to potentially bring a lot of, again, luck overall in life, so it could bring a lot of new opportunities. 9th house is also, in Vedic astrology, especially connected to marriage, because the 9th house is the basis of the Navamsha. Basically, the Navamsha is a breakdown of the 9th house on a, let's say, microscopic level. And that's because in Vedic astrology, marriage is seen as a very spiritual, religious affair, right? So that's why the 9th house is actually ultimately seen as the house of marriage. So this again can show that, there are good chances of you meeting a potential romantic partner, especially since, again, from the 9th house, it's also aspecting the 5th house, which is the house of romance. And Jupiter is the signifier of marriage, children, and the husband archetype, especially in a woman's horoscope. Aside from that, this can also show something about the relationship to the father figure and or mentors. Like, you might get lucky during this time, maybe finding a new mentor that is very positive, very supportive. And generally, it will show good relations with teachers, with, any kind of academic figures, educational figures. And speaking of academia, actually, this is going to be a good time for you to get into something like writing, publishing, and anything involving academia in general, involving higher education. So, for instance, even going for a PhD degree during this time can really be favored for you. You might find yourself, a lot more drawn towards broadening your horizons, maybe reading more than usual. You might be especially drawn to areas that are connected to travel, higher philosophy, religion, faith, maybe other cultures as well. And of course, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it now. This is a very good time for you to travel. You're going to be very favored. This can also show minor conflicts, though. Minor conflicts with father figures, with teachers, gurus, maybe religious leaders as well. And a lot of competition. But I have to say again, with the topic of competition, if you have to pass an exam of any kind during this time, you're going to be favored. Okay, this is pretty much what I can say about the chart 2 phase. And moving on to the chart 3 phase, when Saturn is moving into Pisces. Well, Saturn is actually staying in Pisces, but Rahu is going to be moving in Aquarius. And Jupiter at the beginning is going to be in Gemini from around June 8th until October 13th, after which it's going to be moving in Cancer from October 13th until the end of the year 2025. So, again, with Saturn in the 6th house, you still have to watch for health issues. That is the main concern, because Saturn wants you to be thorough. And of course, the whole time when Saturn is in the 6th house, I should have mentioned this in the chart 2 phase, but I'm saying it now anyway. It's really important that you manage your daily routines, that you make sure you stay as healthy as possible. Basically, it shows potential health problems that could arise because you're not really taking care of yourself, or you're developing potential bad habits. Speaking of bad habits, especially with Rahu in there, you have to pay attention to addictions. Be careful that you don't develop addictions during the chart 2 phase, especially during the chart 2 and the chart 1 phase. Now, Rahu moving into the 5th house, this is definitely going to increase your desire for romance, because Rahu shows a lot of hunger in any area it touches. So, and 5th house is the house of romance. It's also the house of children. It's the house of education as well. So for some of you, this can definitely show that you might develop a new hobby, especially since Rahu is co-ruling the 5th house in your case. So you might be getting in touch with an old hobby, or, developing a new hobby that you get really into, and you might find yourself spending more time than usual towards that. And like I said, it's also about romance, and especially Rahu shows foreign cultures, foreign influences. So depending on what is going on in the individual horoscope, again, there are high chances that you will develop an infatuation for someone who comes from a foreign background, or someone who's just very unconventional with that Rahu energy. It could be someone coming from a foreign background, but it could also be someone who is just unorthodox in some way. I don't know, someone who's covered head to toes in tattoos, or and traditionally Rahu would even just signify someone who's a divorcee, or however you want to pronounce it, or a widower, or just someone from a different cultural background in any way, different religion, different ethnicity, somehow exotic. So yeah, there is an increase in that, and then there might also be a strong desire for you to have kids, maybe if you don't have them, and if you already have kids, it just shows that, well, the relationship with the child is going to come up at the forefront of your life during this time. And there might be ups and downs going on with the relationship with the child as well. Ketu moving into the 11th house might actually show less of an interest in socializing. You might actually even find that the social circle is drying up, or like friends again that you have had for a while are just no longer in your life. Worst case scenario with this, it could even show the death of a friend. Again, I don't want to I don't want to sow the seed, of paranoia, but it could happen. Ketu just shows a feeling of loss in general, so there might be some kind of a, one way or another, some kind of one friend or multiple friends could disappear from your life. And on the positive note, though, you do have the Lord of the second house going into the 11th house, so this can show unexpected and significant financial increases and gains. Also, in the first phase, while Jupiter is going through the 9th house and it's also aspecting Rahu again, this is a very, very good time. I would say probably the best time for you out of all the times of the year. So in between June 8th to October 13th, this is the best time for you to find a potential long-term romantic partner. Just be careful, because since you don't have the Saturn influence on the 5th house or the 7th house, it might also bring some volatility in your love life. You might come across players or people who are just dishonest. So yeah, it doesn't hurt to be cautious. You might also come across some frustrations. Maybe frustration is too much, but you might come across some situations where you're just not interested in the usual things you used to be interested in when it comes to your belief system. So you might be really rethinking your belief systems. You might be becoming more cynical than usual. So let's say if you're someone who normally has a strong sense of faith in a higher power, during this time you might find yourself becoming more cynical, or questioning some of those beliefs, or just not caring much about faith in general, just deciding to focus on what you can do physically with your body in this existence without caring too much about what divinity thinks, which again has its pluses and its minuses. On the one hand, you might become more stressed than usual, but on the other hand, you might actually discover your strength in terms of how you can solve your own problems. Now, when Jupiter is moving into Cancer from around October 13th until the end of 2025 and beyond, this is actually, a very good time for you, especially when it comes to career, of course, because, Jupiter is going to be going into the 10th house. Well, actually, even when it comes to the career situation, it's kind of a bittersweet scenario, especially since Jupiter is exalted. Jupiter is going to be exalted in Cancer, all right? Moving into your 10th house. Now, this is going to be very good for those of you who are working in some field that Jupiter approves of, such as academia, teaching of any sort, consulting of any sort, anything involving faith, religion, publishing, journalism, foreign cultures, travels. So if your career is already heavily focused on these things, and or if you are someone who has built a career where you are standing by your principles, your ideals, you have like a strong moral compass that you are following in your career, or you don't, let me put it to you in a different way. You don't have a career that makes you walk over your principles, right? So if you are in that situation, this is going to be a great time for you. You're going to see a lot of progress, especially if you work in academia, publishing, like I said, and religion, whether it's organized or anything else, something spiritual, anything involving faith, actually. You're going to shine in these areas. To some extent, I would say also medical science, but actually, yes, medical science definitely is also an area because you have Jupiter ruling the 6th house in your case. So, yes. But, yeah, so if you have your careers in any of these areas, you will do great. But if you are someone who's stuck in a corporate job that you hate, this transit is going to be potentially very challenging. You're going to find yourself at odds with the people around you, people at work. You're going to find it increasingly harder to, pretend not to see things that you don't like at the workplace or that you don't think are fair. You might run into clashes with coworkers, with people at work in general, based on what your moral compass is versus what the company stands for, right? So in other words, anytime you see that the company you work for or the people you work for are not really in line with your views of how things should be done, your sense of justice and all that, you're going to suffer a lot, even to the point where, you might have health issues because of this. And aside from that, you might get into arguments with people, based on your belief system, based on your sense of morality. Yeah, could be a bunch of things. So I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm not saying you have to go into this head first and, argue with everyone and lose your job because you call your boss an idiot. I'm giving you a heads up. Be careful, right? Think things through. Think before you say something. Think about whether you need that job or not before you get into arguments. So yeah, just thought I would throw that in. And aside from that, because it's going into the 10th house, it will be again aspecting the 2nd house, will be aspecting the 6th house, which is a good thing. So health-wise, from October 13th until the end of the year, you're going to potentially see a strong improvement in whatever health conditions you might have. Again, if you're someone who's seeking to heal from something, this is going to be the best time for you to do it. You might just see an improvement overall in your health, whichever the situation is. And aside from that, Jupiter is also looking towards the 4th house. So again, your mental health, your emotional health overall is going to be good during this time. You might have this inner sense of optimism and faith that is stronger than usual. And also the aspect that is falling in the 2nd house again is promising good connections to your family of origin. And it's also promising that you will have a steady stream of income, good amounts of income, an ability to save money. Yeah, overall, very good. Also, potentially an increase of your appetite for food, I have to say. Another thing I want to mention, since Jupiter is also ruling the 3rd house, it's going into the 8th house, it's going into the 10th house during the end of the year from October 13th. This is also a time when you might become more independent than usual. And again, if you're someone who also has other placements in the horoscope that show you are meant to be self-employed or you would be better off being self-employed, this is definitely a nudge in the right direction. So you might be having some kind of a breakthrough when it comes to, reaching independence by the end of the year, like making more money by yourself, maybe turning a side hustle into a full hustle or something like that, right? So there's that potential to become self-standing basically in your career. And again, if you are in a job and you don't really like it, this is going to make things harder for you because you're going to, again, find it more and more unbearable to listen to someone, especially if you don't agree with their way of doing things. But I just thought I would mention this. It's up to you to, weigh the pros and cons and think about whether you want a job, whether you want to quit a job, whether you're ready to quit a job. I'm just giving you what I'm seeing here, all right? And yeah, this is pretty much it. This pretty much the gist of 2025, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. And once again, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like the video, click on the notifications bell if you want to see when I upload a new video. Feel free to comment in the comment section with any feedback you would like to share, of course, as long as you keep it respectful. Don't forget to come back to this video throughout the year, of course, and see how it resonates, how things progress, and of course, feel free to share as well in the comment section because it would really help with the research, and it might help other people as well who are going through similar transits. And aside from that, if you're curious to find out more about the membership section that I have on this channel and what it entails and the prices and everything, you can, about the prices, you can click the join button under any video and you can see them. But if you want to see more details about what the membership options entail, you can check the introductory part of this video to get more information. Aside from that, if you're interested in getting a private reading from me, I do readings on a wide variety of topics, career, love readings, predictions, a Chandra Lagna analysis, all kinds of things. If you want to find out more or if you have specific questions that you would like to answer, you can email me at the email address that I will leave in the video description, and I can email you a pricing list of reading options, and if there's something you're interested in that is not on the list, we can discuss about options. Aside from that, last but not least, I also have a tarot channel that I have started way more recently than this channel, but I also enjoy tarot and I've gotten some good results with it as well. So if you're curious about tarot, go ahead and check out my channel, maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much for listening, and once again, I really hope you make the most of this information. I hope you have a great 2025, and I hope to see you at my next video. Bye.